Hey, Trap Set listeners. We've got an incredibly intense episode with the great Ali Koehler this week. But before we get to that, I want to make sure that you stay tuned for a special announcement next week. As some of you know, I recently completed an album that I've been working on for the past year. It would not have been possible without doing this show. The podcast served as a creative bridge from a really desperate place to a place of creative fulfillment that I didn't even know was possible when I started the show. Those of you that have listened for a long time might have noticed that one of the questions I ask my guests is when they first experienced a sense of ecstasy playing music. I can clearly remember that feeling myself, but for years it was subsumed by other bullshit. And talking to all the amazing people that we've had on the show, and just being accountable to you, my audience, to put something out every week, helped me regain a sense of creative agency and get back to that magical feeling. So next week, we're going to announce the first show with my new band, which will feature several guests that have been on the show, including one of my all-time favorite drummers. So stay tuned next week for more details. And now for Ali Koehler's insanely inspiring story.
I feel graceful when I'm drumming, and I don't often feel graceful in life.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Sludge by Vivian Girls, featuring my guest, Ali Koehler, on drums. A native of New Jersey, Ali joined the Brooklyn-based Vivian Girls in 2008. Her propulsive style paints vivid pictures with a minimalist palette and lives at the intersection of such luminaries as Hal Blaine and Tommy Ramone. Aside from her work with Vivian Girls, Ali was also a member of Best Coast. Now based in Los Angeles, she recently reunited with Vivian Girls, who released a new album, Memory, last week. I spoke to her in Pasadena, California. And now my conversation with Ali Koehler.
My dad was a police officer, and my mom was a school bus driver. She stayed home with me until I was 5, and then was a school bus driver.
Did you have older siblings?
I have one older sibling.
Brother, sister?
Brother.
And what kind of music was on when you were growing up?
My parents often had, I remember alternative rock radio being on a lot in the house because my parents like to keep current on music. Apart from that, I remember, for whatever reason, the Cocktail soundtrack really standing out.
With Kokomo by the Beach Boys. What else was on it?
Honestly, I don't even remember. I remember Kokomo by the Beach Boys, and I remember what the cassette cover looked like.
With Tom Cruise and the neon cocktail sign?
Yep. And lots of the B-52s. Those two cassettes were constantly in rotation.
So you were a cassette family?
Yeah, until CDs became a thing.
But your parents didn't have some sort of crazy record collection or something?
They did have a record collection, not a crazy one. They had a big stereo system, a really nice one that I actually am sad they got rid of. They bought it so my dad was in the military and he was stationed in Germany. And then, so my parents were dating when he was a teenager and my mom was 21. She's older by 3 years. And they dated for 2 years and then he got stationed in Germany. So they got married and both went. And this was a stereo system they bought there that was super great quality that they brought back to the States. And I lament the fact that they got rid of it because I've always really, I remember it fondly. And yeah, I don't know.
When you were a little kid listening to the Cocktail soundtrack or the B-52s, were you already a drummer?
No. I didn't start drumming until I was 10 in the school band.
Still relatively young.
Yeah. At that point, it was more like, where did you grow up?
In Wisconsin.
Okay, so a local radio station would mean nothing to you, but
Which radio station?
106.3.
No,
It was like a New Jersey-based alternative rock station that I feel like was very formative for me.
How so?
They just, it was a lot of like 90s alternative and grunge, and I really fell in love with Fountains of Wayne from hearing them on there.
This is before Stacy's mom?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in 1986.
Okay.
So this is like 96. So
when you were 10 and you were in, elementary school band, that's when you were listening to Fountains of Wayne?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And like Everclear I was super into. Like Bush. I was really into 311.
You're rolling your eyes.
Just because it's like, if you put on the Sirius channel Lithium, it's like all that
That's
stuff.
what it is?
Yeah, basically.
Do you have a Sirius radio in your car?
I do.
And you have a subscription?
I do.
So that you can listen to stuff like Lithium, or so that you can listen to Howard
Howard.
Stern? You're a Howard person.
I'm a huge Howard person.
Have you ever been on his show or met him?
I'm going to be on the wrap-up show in October around the New York shows. I've never met Howard. I met Gary briefly, Baba Booey, and Jason and Will, who are writers. Are you a fan of Howard?
I'm not a super fan, but
Okay.
I respect him.
Yeah, he's great. And it's funny, I feel like you're a very good interviewer.
Oh, thanks. He's
and so
a
is he.
great interviewer.
So I was wondering if you listened to him.
I always say that my two kind of interviewing axes are Terry Gross and Mark Maron. I try to fall somewhere in between their approaches.
Okay. Did you listen to Howard with Terry Gross?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I started it, but I didn't finish
It's
it.
a 2-part episode, and I
Yeah.
liked it.
Yeah.
I feel like he was a little bit pandering to her. Or, excuse me, not a little bit pandering to her a little bit.
Yeah.
He was overly respectful, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's still a great conversation.
Yeah.
When did you get into Howard Stern?
Sort of recently, actually. My parents listened to him growing up, around the same time as like B-52s and Cocktail soundtrack. There's also Howard Stern in there. But my husband actually, he borrowed someone's car who had Sirius and was listening to Howard in it, and then like became obsessed with it and started got his own subscription and started listening. And he would listen every morning before going to work, and I would hear it. And then it got to a point where I was recognizing everyone's voices, and I was like, "Oh, is that is that Richard?" And he'd be like, "Yeah." And so, kind of in the background, I got into it. That was probably 2015, 2014. And then I finally got sick of him going to work and me not being able to finish the episodes. So I got my own subscription on my phone. And then only recently I got a car that has it, and I put it in there as well on my phone.
You listen to him every day then?
Yeah.
Is he kind of like the main radio personality that you listen to?
The only radio personality.
Do you
that I
listen to podcasts?
I used to, and when I started listening to Howard, I stopped.
What is it about him that you love so much?
It's hard to put my finger on it, but it's like an entire universe.
Yes.
Where it's very fun to become engrossed in it. And because it's been on the air for 30 plus years, there's so much content that you'll never have heard it all.
You never have to stop listening.
Never.
And consider the fact that one day we all die.
I know. Well, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. That's most of my life is escaping that reality.
Oh, really? When did you start thinking about that?
Probably around when I was 10.
That was a very pivotal year for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a pivotal few years.
Do you remember when you played drums for the very first time?
No. I think it started with a school band, it started on like a practice pad, just like paradiddles and whatever. So, and just like learning to read like quarter notes and what timing was with that. So it's pretty unremarkable. Like I remember like with my best friend, at the time, she and I both started playing drums in the school band, and we used to practice like in her driveway at her house. But
on practice pads?
On our practice pads, just like, because her parents were like, get the fuck out of the house, I can't handle that. I think both our parents were like, why didn't you pick something that's like melodic? But
sometimes I wonder if I developed shame around my drummerdom because of that.
Because of parents?
Because of the fact that it's the most obnoxious instrument when you're learning it.
Yeah, it's really loud. I mean, I guess practice pads aren't that loud, but yeah.
Can you remember the first time you had an ecstatic experience playing music?
An ecstatic experience. Like, well, I don't know if I have.
Really?
No, it's not. I don't know. I feel like with drumming in particular, you're so, or at least I personally am so in my head with like, oh, am I too fast? Am I too slow? This isn't right. Like, it's like a constant like reevaluating and beating myself up in my head.
Is that useful?
Probably not, but that's what therapy's for, I guess.
Does your therapist work with you to try to be more kind to yourself?
I'm sure in her own way. We haven't really gotten there yet. It's more trudging through a backlog of shit.
When I started doing this show, that's something I thought about a lot. Like whether other people were in their head when they played.
100%.
Because with me, when I started playing, I was not in my head at all. It was just
really?
this pure feeling of joy every time. And then as I aspired to become better at it or good, then the self-judgment started coming in, which probably was useful to a certain extent. But then it got so strong that I don't know if I was enjoying it anymore. And then I was asking what the point of living this life is, you know, like if I wasn't going to enjoy it, why not just manage a hedge fund and at least make a bunch of money doing that?
Because as I've found, and I'm sure you found too, when you're not doing it also,
it makes it worse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's no, it's like, it almost feels like you're bound to playing music. And as much as I like feel like it has historically reinforced like unhealthy behaviors and coping mechanisms, or just like...
You mean with you or in general?
Me.
Oh, okay.
But also in general, I think that's like
music
kind of
has
part of it.
Reinforced unhealthy
like
coping mechanisms.
Touring is like, it's all like drinking and like, you know, not taking care of yourself.
Yeah, sure,
and,
yeah.
That's like such a common part of it. And also just the kind of harsh like judgment on yourself, and I don't know, it brings out that part of me which I don't necessarily like, but when I don't do it, then it also doesn't feel good.
The thing that I've learned is it doesn't have to bring out that part of you.
Yeah.
I mean, or it can bring that part out of you, and then you can communicate with that part of you in a healthy way.
Well, that's what these shows that I have coming up with Vivian Girls is going to be me, you know, it's going to be boot camp for me trying to be better to myself, I guess.
Tell me about what goes through your head when you play a show usually.
It's been so long since, so after Vivian Girls, I started a band where I played guitar because I was like, fuck drums. And so that's different. Playing a show where I play guitar is different for me than one where I play drums.
How so?
I don't know. I feel like I can have, it's not that I don't have fun playing drums. I think the fact that I've been doing it for so long makes me feel like I should be better than I am. And
what do you mean by better?
I don't know. I guess like I should have better timing. I should have better ideas.
By better timing, you mean more metronomic timing?
Yes.
And is that better? Does that make it more
That's
compelling?
what people think is better.
Well,
or that's what
do
people
you
have.
think?
That's a good question. I feel like I have internalized a lot of the negative stuff people have said about my drumming, which has made it not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get back in touch with what makes it fun. It's funny. I said something to my husband where I was like after our first few practices with Vivian girls this time around, I was like, man, I forgot how much I like drumming. I was like, when you do something that you're just like, it just feels effortless, like swimming or riding a bike, where you just like feel like, oh, my body belongs doing this. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, I don't relate to that at all. And I was like, okay, well, that's how.
What does he do?
He's very into movies. I don't know. I guess
like,
physical.
So like when you're watching a movie?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he doesn't really relate to like physical stuff, but like, I feel graceful when I'm drumming, and I don't often feel graceful in life.
Do you feel like you're more yourself when you're drumming?
Yeah, I guess I can I don't know. That's such a complicated question.
Earlier, you said that you've internalized lots of the negative things that people say about it, but then this go around, it feels like since you're returning to it, that maybe the visceral joy of doing it is overpowering that voice in your mind for the moment?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And playing with Katie and Cassie also feels like home, so it's nice. Also, having started playing together in secret was really nice. Like, you didn't have to think about what someone might think of it, or I don't know. No one knew, so it was just like fun. You could kind of play in a vacuum.
Well, earlier I asked if you could remember a feeling of ecstasy playing music.
I guess I have, but it's always been like double-edged.
There's that, and then there's also the demon.
I guess so.
And how does the demon manifest? You mean that's the negative self-talk?
Yeah, the negative self-talk and just like feeling frustrated that you can't do more than what you're doing, or I don't know.
Does that extend to other parts of your life? Like, do you feel frustrated that you're not doing other things in life?
Always. I'm never doing enough in my own mind.
If we can't pinpoint like a single moment where you felt amazing playing drums, like what made you want to become a drummer and start identifying as a drummer?
A couple things. Partially, well, for one, I was like, I know I want to play something. I know I want to play in the school band, and I know I want it to be something that could be applied to being in a rock band. So it was either like drums or in strings or something having to do like maybe like upright bass, which could be translated to whatever. But and then
electric bass.
Yeah, yeah, it can't be translated to much else. And then my brother was like, you should play drums because everyone always needs a drummer. And I was like, okay, if you say so. And also there were no girls in the percussion section at my elementary school. So I was like, fuck yeah, I want to do that. Because I was like, at the time I was really into like skateboarding and like, typically tomboyish stuff. So it just felt like the next logical thing.
I know, it's so weird, but there's nothing innately masculine about drumming, is there?
I know. No, there's not. But for some reason it is.
I wonder why that is. Have you thought about it?
Yeah, it's like, it requires like upper body strength, I guess, which is typically a more masculine thing.
It's also loud and powerful.
It's like obnoxious and aggressive. Or it can be. It doesn't have to be.
But it's the most innately loud instrument.
Yes.
So, I don't know. Does that translate to masculinity in this culture? Maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it does.
Because the girls in my school are all like flute, clarinet, something
which
like...
are not innately feminine instruments.
But they're also like, it's like lighter, like you carry the whole thing in a little case. And I don't know. It's weird how you internalize that stuff.
But how did you go from playing in school band to getting a drum set and joining rock bands?
So my dad got me a drum set that he found in the newspaper from some guy that was like his practice kit. And I remember it was $400 for like a whole thing, cymbals, all of it. And I drove with him somewhere in North Jersey to pick it up. I don't remember where. And I think that was shortly after joining the school band because I wanted to learn how to play on like a full kit, and started going to some drum lessons to learn how to like, keep time on a hi-hat while playing the kick drum and snare and, simple stuff like that.
Did you like drum lessons?
It's funny. I did really like drum lessons, and I bounced around to a few teachers. My first teacher, who I loved, moved, and I was like legitimately depressed about it.
What did you love so much about the first teacher?
He was really, I don't know, being alone in a room with like an older man as a 10-year-old girl feels wrong and weird. And he was like completely non-threatening and really like encouraging and not like a weird old rock dude. He was like younger, and he was just like he seemed normal. And I found that that's not the case for other drum teachers often. Like there was one guy that I just like, I fucking hated him. And like for no reason other than he like made me get the book, Stick Control, and was like super into Buddy Rich, and was just like really into like beating like rudiments to death, which I was like, this is boring. I want to like play a fill or something, like I'm not trying to be the best at drums. I'm trying to drum, I guess, which is like kind of my motto.
I'm trying to figure out what you mean by better and the best.
I don't know. I guess the best to me is like you could sit down and you could play super complex, insane, like you could do like, not that I'd ever want to, but like double kick pedals and like huge mini rack toms and like crazy like holding rolls and whatever. And or you could choose to play simply. And it's like I choose to play simply because that's where I excel. I'm not capable of playing anything I wanted.
I feel like there are great writers who use very economical language, either as a choice or because that's what they have, and great writers that construct this grammatically complex prose, but those are never considered better than others, right? We don't
True.
think of James Joyce as a better writer than Kurt Vonnegut, for example, who writes with straightforward prose. It's a weird thing that we apply that type of thinking to music.
Yeah.
Especially when, lots of the best musicians are really simple.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I don't even like things that are complicated. I just feel like I come up short for not being I don't know.
If you could take a pill and play like one of those people, would you?
No, I wouldn't.
But yet you still have somewhat of an inferiority complex about it.
And I don't know
it's
why.
Complicated.
Yeah, I don't know.
Something happened, huh? Were people weird about your drumming?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
When did that start happening?
That started happening. This podcast is so emotional. I'm like,
okay?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah,
okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but
No, we should.
okay.
I'm just like, I feel weird because it's like we're just having this conversation. I'm like, this is a heavy, like a very loaded thing for me. And I didn't realize it's loaded until right now.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. This is what I do in therapy, like every week. I feel like, oh, feelings, what are those? I had a drum teacher who was so mean to me.
You were 12.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm fucking emotional about this drum teacher. I would often have to like test into my place in the band, and he'd like no matter how well I did, I was never good enough. And often told me I'm like literally on the verge of tears, but this makes for good podcasting.
It's podcast gold.
I know.
It's not intentional, but
it's like looking back, I'm like, I feel bad for my my younger self. Like told me I wasn't a real drummer. Told me he would tell me when I was a real drummer. And made fun of me and kind of bullied me for wearing earplugs while drumming. And I went home and told my dad, and my dad, he made me go get a hearing test at the school nurse to prove that I had sensitive hearing, that I needed to wear earplugs. He just was like a dick and had it out for me. And my dad basically called him and was like, "You're harassing my daughter. You need to stop." And I quit drums after that.
do you feel like your dad didn't take enough advocacy?
No, he did.
Oh,
he
did.
went he went above and beyond. And I wouldn't have even realized that this guy was harassing me unless I was going home and telling my dad what he was doing. And my dad being like, what? That's not right or normal.
Well, this guy, let's kind of break this apart. Okay. So if I had to guess, I would say this guy falls under the category of frustrated artist, and then he's abusing other people and projecting onto other people abusive stuff that's happened to him or whatever.
Do you have a tissue? I can't
Sure,
believe I'm
just a
fucking
second.
crying on the drumming podcast. It's very, drumming's very loaded for me, and it just, I just feel like I'll never feel good enough.
Did you love drumming when you were 12?
I did.
Okay. So you did experience joy.
Yeah.
And this fucker.
Yeah. I hope he's dead. I literally, my friend who was in the school band with me, it's funny. I texted her a long time ago, something about him, and was like, I wonder, God, I hope Mr. Mobley's dead. And she was like, dude, same. He was just he sucked.
Okay,
and he especially sucked to young girls.
let's pull this apart some more. So he said, "You're not a real drummer, and I'll tell you when you're a real drummer."
Yes.
Okay. What do you believe a real drummer is?
I don't even know.
To me, it's just somebody that plays drums. I mean, it's
Yeah.
what's a real person?
I know.
Somebody who's a person.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
alive. And if you wanted to take it to a more extreme, you could say someone who loves playing drums or somebody who needs to play drums, I guess. Is that a real drummer?
Yeah.
But it has absolutely nothing to do with any sort of technical skill, right?
No.
And at the time you were impressionable, and that was the worst possible thing someone could have said to you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, I've never thought about the weight that had on my relationship with music, and it's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the cool thing is that I quit drumming because of him, because I was like, fuck this, and stopped playing drums for years. And then I had a friend, Ryan, in high school who was like, do you want to drum in a band with me? And I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough. And he was like, it doesn't matter. And then we started playing together, and I've never not drummed in a band since. Yeah, I feel like it was hearing drummers like Toby Vale and Meg White. I was kind of like, oh, I don't have to be able to do everything. Like, I can do what they're doing. And I would play along to them. And then I was like, if they can do it, then I can do it. So.
Did you feel comfortable calling yourself a drummer at that point?
I don't know. I don't know that I am comfortable calling myself a drummer even still.
When someone asks you what you do, what do you say?
I would say what my job is. I do clothing production.
And so let's get into that a little bit. So you do clothing production.
Yeah.
For
a company called Tuesday Bassin. She is my friend, and that's also the name of the company. It's like we make clothing in LA, like size inclusive clothing. So we have like a large size run from double extra small to 5X. And we're going up to 6X, and we make it all in LA.
Where's the factory?
In South Central.
And
we have there's like multiple factories that do different things, but like the main like cut and sew factory is in South Central.
Is it all designed in LA as well?
Yeah, so we like sample and come up with designs with a pattern maker and do that.
How did you learn how to do that?
I was a fan of Tuesdays because she's an illustrator, and her illustrations are really cool. And she was a fan of me because she was a fan of Vivian girls. So we were mutual fans of each other, and I was nannying at the time 3 years ago, but the girl I was nannying for was growing up, as they do. And I needed to pick up some more work because I wasn't like watching her as often. So I was helping Tuesday pack orders. And I've just been working for her ever since. At the time, Allie Hanlon from Peach Kelly Pop was also working for her. And we would kind of be like, we would joke about how us having experience like touring and playing music made us perfect for that type of job where you kind of just like figure shit out as you go and wear many hats and stuff. So I just taught myself how to do clothing production within the last 2 years by going around and knocking on doors in the fashion district and finding out what people do, asking questions, whatever, which I feel like I wouldn't be able to do if I wasn't like familiar with touring and, just having to be like, well, we're rolling up to this venue. Who's here? Like,
let's figure it out.
Yep. And it's nice to kind of apply that to another thing that's creative, that's not music.
Working on music exclusively is not what you want to do.
No.
You like having a balance between different creative pursuits.
Yeah. I think when I was playing drums in Best Coast, before I was fired, I was considering quitting because it was making me not like music anymore to be gone so often. I'm like a creature of habit, and touring is bad for that. But I've been with my husband, he's not my husband, but we've been together since like before Vivian Girls. So I have always had that like, there's someone at home that I miss. And like I knew I wanted to have a family one day.
And do you have children now?
I have a daughter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How old is she?
She's almost 9 months old.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
How's that been so far?
So good. I love it.
Do you feel like nannying gave you any sort of preparation for
Yes.
it? It did?
Yes, big time. Which I'm really glad that I have that under my belt. Also, like a bunch of friends and family members having babies, I feel like I knew exactly what to expect. And it has pretty much been like exactly what I expected it to be, which is great.
After you finished high school, were you still in the same band with your friends?
So I finished high school. Yeah, I was in that band and went to college at Rutgers in New Brunswick and was still in that band. And
what were you studying?
I didn't know when I got there. I wound up choosing German language and literature. I was still in that band. We played shows in New Brunswick. And then I also started other new bands. I started a new one the summer before going to college, and we kind of continued there. And that's when I met Katie. We recruited Katie from Vivian Girls to sing for the band. And then she and I think, every band that I was in New Brunswick, beyond that, I was in with Katie. And then I went to study abroad, and she formed Vivian Girls with Cassie and Frankie. And I was like, fuck, I want to be in that band. And
Were you studying in Germany?
I was, yeah.
And so you're completely fluent?
At a time, I was.
Okay.
Right now, not so much.
Okay.
But I could get back to it. I remember a lot. And, like, when my husband watches movies that are in German, I, like...
Your husband's German?
No, but he's, like, huge into movies and watches a lot of foreign movies. So if he watches any that are in German, I'm like, oh, I know what they're saying. Cool. Mm-hmm. I haven't lost it. No, my husband's Puerto Rican, actually.
So then how did you actually become a member of the band?
I constantly was like, if you ever want a different drummer, I will drum for you. Because they were having, I think Frankie was maybe not so much into it. Frankie was older than them and, like, not into hanging out with, like, 21-year-old girls. So, and I was a 21-year-old girl. And I was like, I'll hang out with you. But I just, like, I really loved the band and really wanted to play drums for them and, like, let them know that constantly. So when it came a time where they're like, I think in order for us to keep touring, we need a different drummer, I was like, I'm here.
Did you have to try out?
No.
Did you feel like there was a special magic that happened when you played with that group of people?
Yes.
That you hadn't felt before?
Yes.
How would you describe it?
Well, Katie and I playing together was always so, like, safe and familiar. And Cassie I knew from other bands. Like, our bands would play together a bunch before Vivian Girls was a thing. So I was just, like, very comfortable with them. And I think we were all kind of on similar levels of, like, skill. So it never felt like there was, like, a wrong thing to do or play. So that kind of safety was very important and nice. But I also have just always thought that Cassie's songwriting was so good, and I love her voice, and just I feel like she has something special that is hard to come by. And Katie, I think, writes really interesting melodic bass lines that I really love, and they both also have, like, a sense of humor and are, like, fun.
What did you contribute? If you were describing your drumming in the same kind of affectionate way that you were describing their contributions, what would you say?
Well, at first I was just trying to kind of recreate what Frankie was doing so that I didn't, like, rock the boat in the band. I don't know. I don't know.
Come on, try. Like, what did you bring to the table?
I think more important than my drumming, what I brought to the table was, like, being a peacekeeper and, like, making it harmonious, because I feel there was a lot of discord going on.
And you're good at kind of refereeing that stuff?
Yes.
Do you enjoy doing that?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. Sometimes I resent, not with this band, with other bands that I've been in, I resent the fact that I'm like, I guess it's not, okay, so in my band Upset, I often resented the fact that I felt like I was the one having to, like, keep the momentum, which I found, like, very tiring and exhausting. In Vivian Girls, we all are, like,
driven.
Yes, we're all driven towards the same thing, and it's very easy to get stuff done together, which I didn't realize was rare at the time before, but now that I've played with other people, Cassie describes it as trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and with Vivian Girls it's just, like, easy. The referee thing, I don't know, I think that's just kind of the role that I assume in a lot of areas of my life. because of my family. My brother he's older than me. He's an addict.
Okay.
So
do you feel like you were kind of the intermediary between your brother and your parents?
yeah. Yeah.
How's he doing now?
Not good.
Yeah. How are your parents doing?
They would say great.
How are you?
Better, despite the fact that I cried, I'm good. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get better about like letting myself feel things and going
Me too.
forward.
As a new parent, have you given much thought to like what kind of type of parent you want to be?
Yes, a lot of thought.
What are some areas where you would take what your parents gave you and do it the same way, and where would you change?
So I was just talking about this with someone the other day. I forget who, but my parents did, a lot of great things, which, we traveled a lot. I was like a really anxious kid, and I'm a really anxious adult, but they always were like, okay, but we're like not going to let that stop you from doing stuff. So a lot of forging ahead regardless of like they never, I feel like it'd be easy if your kid was like going to have a meltdown about something to just avoid it. But my parents never did that. Like, be like, we're going to go on a hike. And if you like flip out and you hate it, we'll work through it.
Great.
Yeah. So I did a lot as a kid. Like we did, camping, hiking, like lots of outdoorsy stuff. And yeah, lots of traveling, taking me to concerts.
Like alternative rock concerts?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your favorite?
Well, so I went to the first Lilith Fair tour with my parents, which was really cool. And like, I was 10.
Yeah, that was like
that
96.
Was like, yeah. I remember going after that tour, going back to school, because that was in the summer, and going back to school. And I had been taught the year before by a drum teacher that I loved, Mr. Walsh. I had been taught to hold the drumsticks like jazz style. And when I went back, I was like, the drummer of the Cardigans does not hold his sticks like that, and therefore I don't want to. He's like, okay. So he's like, yeah, you can hold them however you want. So yeah, and then like when I got older, they would like in high school like drive me to Philadelphia or New York and drop me off to see bands. I saw a lot of like emo bands in high school. I'm still super into that. But yeah, dropped me off at a lot of like Saves the Day shows and stuff like that.
That's Jersey, right?
Super Jersey. Yeah.
But anyway, so is there anything that you've thought you'd like to try differently?
Yes. So, definitely because I have like such a hard time with anxiety, and I think it's been exacerbated by kind of denying it and forging ahead, as it were. I definitely like identifying feelings and talking about them. And like my parents, I think it's a generational thing, but they often don't like to talk about difficult things or things that make you sad or whatever. But when you're growing up in a house where someone is an addict, you kind of have to talk about those things. So,
do they come from families with addicts as well,
yeah.
like your grandparents?
Yeah.
Well, that's like a classic.
Yes.
That's a classic trait of children of addicts, is that their way of surviving is to deny it and forge ahead, right?
And it was a lot of denying and forging ahead. So in my 30s, I am working on not denying and.
I think to a certain extent, that works.
Yeah,
it lets you live your life if you're in a position as a child where your parents are addicted to something,
for sure,
and you need to kind of forge your own way.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily. It was like there's a lot of addiction and alcoholism on both sides of the family, not necessarily like parents, but yeah, it's definitely like in the atmosphere. And they survived. They did it. They're here. For me personally, I felt like that didn't. I'm like, I would kind of have like existential anxiety as a kid, and my parents would be like, oh, you're just too smart. It's okay. Like, whatever.
So what would you, now, if your daughter had existential anxiety, what would you do differently?
I would put her in therapy, for one. And which is funny because
But therapy is only for crazy people.
well, yeah, I know. I was like, well, guess what? I'm crazy, so take me. Yeah. No, there's definitely, especially with my dad being a police officer, there's a lot of like
stigma against it.
Yeah, I think so. I think not now that he's retired, but I think at the time. And I also was against it. Like,
in the sense that it would be seen as a sign of weakness.
Exactly. There's a lot of that. And my anxiety and depression, my grandmother was like on hospice with cancer in our house when I was like 12 and died. And then I had like a ton of anxiety and depression and existential dread and all that after that. To the point where it was like my anxiety was so bad that I was like leaving class, like to go hyperventilate in the bathroom. So then I was like, I need medicine, like something's wrong. And therapy was suggested to me by any psychiatrist that I spoke to, but to me it was bad enough that I had to admit that I needed medicine, that I was like, well, I'm not going to do both of those things. Like, let's just get on with it. Mm-hmm. So I should have done that, but also hindsight is 20/20. I'm doing it now.
Good for you. You would put your daughter in therapy if she was having those same, if you started to notice, oh, okay, this is obviously
just to like learn tools to, because I feel like I didn't really have the tools to deal with it. And like my parents would be like, you just need to learn to talk yourself down from it. But I didn't know how to do that. And I feel like in going to therapy, I've learned how to do that. And I don't know if I'd be able to teach my daughter how to do that. I think one thing that like is becoming like more of a thing with kids with child rearing is like consciousness and time, or not consciousness, mindfulness and time ins, where you kind of like, instead of punishing a kid that's like clearly lost control emotionally, like sitting down and talking about what they're feeling and what it means, and like, I don't know, kind of normalizing feelings. I feel like I often don't allow myself to feel things that aren't like happiness or anger. It's like I need to like
be in touch with what your emotions are trying to tell you.
Yes, exactly.
Because they can act as a compass.
Yes, and yeah, my therapist says the same thing. It's like
anger
is an indication that a boundary's been crossed, and how do you set that boundary to make it so that like you feel, I don't know, can't articulate the rest of that thought, but yeah, I'm learning all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, because sometimes you can't control other people's behavior, but perhaps if you are setting proper boundaries, you don't have to.
Exactly.
Support for the Trap Set comes from the Illinois-based label Polyvinyl Records. Independently owned and operated since 1994, Polyvinyl has released influential albums from artists such as American Football, Of Montreal, Always, and this week's guest, Vivian Girls. For a limited time, visit polyvinylrecords.com and enter coupon code TRAPSET at checkout to receive 15% off all Vivian Girls merchandise, including the band's brand new album, Memory. While you're there, be sure to check out the band's latest music videos and get tickets for their upcoming tour, which kicks off October 3rd in Ventura, California at the Tavern.
How long was your first tenure with Vivian Girls?
I joined in like right when I graduated college, so June of 2008. And then I left in 2010. I'm not sure what month. I want to say it was like South by Southwest, so maybe like March. Because Vivian Girls had taken Best Coast on tour to open for us on the West Coast that fall, I think. I'm usually good with like times and stuff, but when it comes to music, I'm just like, it's all a blur. And I had a lot of fun playing with Beth and Bob. And Katie had started Lacera and Cassie had started The Babies with Kevin Morby. And it seemed like they were kind of more into that or like wanted to do more with those things. And I didn't really have a thing. So I was like, I want to keep doing this. So, hey, Beth, if you need a drummer, I'm here. And
this isn't translating over audio, but you're doing a cute little pose.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Resting your chin on your hand.
Trying to look cute and sweet. Like, please. I told her that, and she's like, would you move to LA? And I was like, hold on one second. And like, talked to Lloyd, my husband or boyfriend at the time, and was like, what would you think about, because we were dating long distance at that time between New Jersey and Puerto Rico. And I was like, what would you think about me joining Best Coast and moving to LA? And he's like, funny you should ask. I was going to ask you what you think about me dropping out of college and leaving Puerto Rico. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to go do this. So I was like, yeah, I'll move to LA. And she was like, cool. Do you want to do that in like the next couple months? I was like, yeah. And so I told Katie and Cassie once we got home from that tour and started making plans to move out here where I am currently.
And if there's a feeling that you associate with Best Coast, what is it? Your experience.
I'm not good at associating feelings, so it might take me a minute. It was good. It was every experience, good or bad, is fruitful.
Productive,
yeah.
Sure. But how did you feel when you were in the band? I mean, was it similar to playing with Vivian Girls?
No.
How was it different?
In Vivian Girls, everything was very much split 3 ways. Like, we were a band, and this was like, I am a gun for hire, so I didn't really have any power or kind of any say in the band, which is why I eventually was like, I don't know that I want to do that. Like, I don't want to sacrifice not seeing my significant other for someone else's vision. And also at the time I was 23 and Beth was 22, and we both were probably in like, or not probably, definitely in like really unhealthy mindsets, like super young, and I don't know. I just like, I guess I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but it wasn't good for us. It wasn't healthy for us to be together at that time. There was a lot of like resentment and kind of like unspoken tension from both sides. And then I was fired from the band, and I felt it coming, because I was like, I feel like something's amiss, but I don't know. And then I was fired, and I was like, oh, okay, I was right. And then I was like really angry and resentful for a long time after that. And not for being fired, but for going from Vivian Girls, where everyone was like my friend and like sisterly, to someone who I didn't know on that level, but I was kind of like projecting that relationship onto her. I felt like extra burned, that it's like, oh, we aren't sisters and we aren't like best friends. But so I was like super resentful, and like for a long time, for a couple of years, and then eventually got over it. Not got over it, but like worked through it.
And you guys are okay now?
Yes.
When you listen to yourself playing either, on live footage with Best Coast or on records with Vivian Girls, what do you think about?
How I'm going too fast or too slow.
That's not that uncommon, but is there ever a time when you listen back to a song and you're like, wow, I really got somewhere there?
Yeah, for sure. There's stuff where it's like, oh, that there's like one song in particular on Vivian Girls, Everything Goes Wrong. It's called I'm Not Asleep, where it's like double time on the hi-hat. And I'm like, that sounds tight.
How often, when you're listening to other musicians or other drummers, do you feel like they're going too fast or too slow?
Never.
So what does that tell you?
I don't know that I'm like my own worst enemy.
If you were to teach a drum lesson to a 12-year-old with a similar mindset to who you were when you were 12, what would your first lesson be?
Oh God. I got this book that was just like standard rock beats, and that like teaching myself that and nailing them, and then like not be able to think about the beats while I was in school and tapping them out on my desk. Like that's like probably the most fun I've had learning drum stuff. So probably just like because I feel like I'm really impatient, and I'm like, I want to start playing drums and then be able to play a song in a band. So like, how quickly can I get to that point? Like, I don't want to waste time on stick control.
Yeah. Well, if we're going back to the language analogy,
Yeah.
you learn how to talk and you learn how to communicate with your parents and your friends and your family first.
Yeah.
And then years later, you study grammar and spelling.
Yeah.
And you learn how to write it down. I don't understand why we insist on teaching reading music before someone can express themselves musically.
I think I would definitely go for the expression because, I was like bombarded with like paradiddles, and it's like, well, who's going to use this? I'm remembering now too that the girl that I nannied for a long time, I don't know if did I talk about that before we were recording or whatever. I talked about it.
You referred to it, but we didn't really talk about her.
So I would like play my friends' bands while driving around LA to go to like the aquarium or whatever. And she fell in love with the P.S. Eliot song Mood Ring. And I had a practice space at the time and was like, let's go and like play around on the instruments. So, like, you could play around whatever you want. And there was a full kit set up in there. And so she was like behind the kit and just doing whatever she wanted. And then I started playing Mood Ring on the guitar, and she started playing the drum beat. And it was crazy. But I was like, that's how you do it.
I would agree. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You talk before you learn grammar. That's like exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think the way that music is slid into school curriculum now is that it's touted as a way to like improve your rational mind, and reading music makes you good at math and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And that's true, but it's not the primary function of it. It should be there to improve your emotional
for sure
awareness.
And I think it did do that for me in a roundabout way.
Yeah. Also, that's kind of like one of the strengths that you bring to any band or creative situation that you're in, right? Is that you are good at kind of reading people and figuring out how to make
very good at taking the
mesh.
temperature of the room. I will say though, I do wish that I knew like music theory and notes, and like I wish I played piano and knew.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you learned German fluently,
That's
and
true.
you read German literature.
That's true.
And there's thousands upon thousands of words, yet there's only 12 notes in the musical scale.
I guess I just need to actually
and you
try.
could sit down and approach it the same way that you did that.
Well, that is a fun thing too about having a child now, is that everything is like a little mini piano, a little xylophone, a little this, and like I play her piano more than she does. I'm like, oh, that's how you play Pop Goes the Weasel, like, and obsessed with that. And that is a really nice side effect, is like falling back in love with music through
you falling
her
back
eyes.
in love with everything, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like the world doesn't suck, it turns out. You just need to look at it
You
through
just
the
have
eyes
to
of
have
a baby.
kid.
Yeah.
What was the impetus to start Vivian girls again?
Katie was the one who kicked it off. And I think it was like, I think her thinking, which I know from doing a bunch of interviews the past couple of weeks, was like, that was fun. It's been long enough to be fun again. Like, I'm not burnt out anymore. Life's too short not to do fun things. Let me see if they'd be into it. And we were like, of course. And so Katie has a baby too. He's a toddler now. So logistically, a little more wrangling than when I was just like, sure, I'll drive into Brooklyn. But Cassie came out here from Brooklyn, and we're all, like I said, are all very driven. So it's like, if we say we're practicing this week, we're practicing, and like we all show up and we all work on it and are like all on the same page. So it was nice.
Where would you like the band to go next?
We can't really tour like how we used to at all because we have
But is
small
that something
children.
you would even want
No,
to do?
no.
So good.
Yeah, I'm
That
glad
rules
I
that
have
out.
that boundary.
Sure.
Yeah. No, because I really don't enjoy it. I'm just like a little agoraphobic. So like leaving home makes me heightened anxiety and then unhealthy coping mechanisms. And it just sucks. So I think just doing like short one-off things or like, you know, if we were offered to go somewhere for like a week, like I'd be into that. And to just keep writing and playing together because that is what feels good. And making more albums, but like taking it easy and having boundaries and being adults about it.
How do you feel about the latest album that you've made?
I love it.
So when you listen back to that, you're not worried about your playing?
Not at all.
So what's the
But
difference?
I think that Rob, who recorded it, Rob Barbato, do you know him?
I don't know him, no.
He did Baby's Our House on Haunted Hill? Our House on the Hill? I don't remember what it's called. That album's like perfect. And Katie's album, Sees the Light, also like my favorite album of Lucera's. And he did those. And so I was like, I always kind of wanted to work with him. And I was very happy that they both wanted to work with him for this. And I think I expressed a lot of that, like feeling like we all did, feeling like we weren't good enough and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And kind of like, was like, you guys are a band. Like in the truest sense of the word. Like, you guys play together well. You slow down together. You speed up together. And, like, that's okay. And kind of just, like, basically was like, you guys are crazy. This is great. And kind of made us feel better. He also pushed us super hard to get the best performances out of us, which we had not done.
By best, do you mean the most compelling, the most technically virtuosic?
The most compelling
like
with the right
emotionally.
energy.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we would play takes and be like, perfect. And he's like, yeah, that was good. Let's do it again. And we're like, no. Because we thought we had like nailed it. And then we'd listen back to like the take we liked and the one he picked. And we're like, oh yeah, you're right. That one's better. Just because it feels better.
Just because he's a man doesn't mean you have to defer to him, Allie.
Yeah, but he's a man who is very smart and knows what he's doing.
Well, he thinks you're a real drummer.
He does. Another funny moment, too, that I'm just remembering where I was like, I don't deserve to be here, was Best Coast played. We did 2 late night performances, one on Letterman and one on Jimmy Fallon when he was late night. And the lady doing my makeup, she's like, how do you feel? And I was like, I don't know, like scared, like I'm not good enough to be here. I feel like, I don't know. And she's like, honey, they wouldn't have you come if you weren't good enough to be here. I was like, yeah, I guess so.
Did you believe her?
A little bit.
Well, Allie, you were certainly good enough to be here. This was a great
Thank you.
conversation. And is there anything else that you wanted to add or anything that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't ask?
No, I don't know. Baba Booey.
Well, Baba Booey, I'll give you, I don't really know much about him, but he is an audience member on one of my favorite drum nerd videos of all time.
What is it?
It's Tony Williams live in New York. and he's playing with Wallace Roney on trumpet. He has an incredible band, but Baba Booey's in the audience.
Oh, nice.
So that was on Laserdisc when I first saw it. It's probably on YouTube now.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
cool.
about all I know about Baba Booey.
Great. That's great.
But I hope that you can also be a guest on Howard Stern someday, and then we can compare notes.
That's when I'll be a real drummer.
Thanks so much, Allie.
Thanks.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.